Eliot A. Cohen, Supreme Command, Soldiers, Statesmen, and Leadership in Wartime. Embark on an insightful journey into wartime leadership and the intricate relationship between politicians and military leaders, as presented in Eliot A. Cohen's book, Supreme Command, Soldiers, Statesmen, and Leadership in Wartime. Dive deeper into the profoundly different demands of politics, business, and the military, discovering how exceptional statesmen like Lincoln, Clemenceau, Churchill, and Ben-Gurion succeeded, in part, by defying conventional wisdom and managing military affairs directly. This book summary sheds light on the critical role politics play in effective war management, and powerfully argues that war is not just a military enterprise, but a political one.
Leadership in politics, business, and military. Leaders in different fields may possess varying skills, and success in one field does not guarantee success in another. The relationship between military and civilian leadership is often a topic of debate. Political scientist Samuel Huntington believed that military leaders should be called upon only in emergencies, and the rest of the time, politicians should not interfere. However, the greatest war statesmen of the past 2 centuries, such as Lincoln, Clemenceau, Churchill, and Ben-Gurion, did not adhere to this theory. They recognized that war is not only a military enterprise but a political instrument, requiring the intimate involvement of politicians in every aspect of war. These leaders were attentive to details, technology, and were ruthless in their approach. Ultimately, their success derived from their ability to lead democracies in the era of total war. Lincoln's commanding mind. Abraham Lincoln proved to be an exceptional commander-in-chief during the U.S. Civil War, despite lacking military experience. He trusted the judgment of his generals, especially Ulysses Grant, but remained intimately involved in the war's execution. Lincoln knew his generals' capabilities and shortcomings, and was able to unite the fractious and jealous military leaders into an effective team. He spent long hours in the War Department's telegraph room, reading messages from the front and keeping abreast of the rapidly changing military technologies. Lincoln's guiding principles were to restore the Union without expanding slave territory, to keep the sympathy of pro-Union but slave-holding states, and to avoid risking the intervention of European powers. He emancipated slaves to exploit anti-slavery sentiment overseas and to keep Britain and France from aiding the South. The most effective way to win the war was to multiply offensives around the South, rather than achieving a single dramatic victory. Lincoln's discipline and insight into warfare and statecraft proved his commanding mind. George Clemenceau, the leader who never left war to the generals. At the age of 76, Georges Clemenceau took real power in France amidst a crisis in 1917. He managed 2 fierce, mutually antagonistic generals and an aggregation of allies while insisting on getting a first-hand view of action at the front. By walking around and talking to his soldiers, he addressed issues that made a big difference in morale. He never left war to the generals, choosing between strategies and tactics advanced by his generals and even purging the Sixth Army's leadership. Despite the opposition of Ferdinand Foch, Clemenceau made peace on terms he could achieve. Many war chiefs came away nursing bruises from dealing with Churchill, but Clemenceau stood firm, walking among his men and making sure that the general's plans never lost sight of the soldiers on the ground. Churchill's war statesmanship. Churchill's involvement in military tactics was exemplary, and his ability to manage generals and alliances noteworthy. He believed war to be a political undertaking. Winston Churchill's personality was unique, but when it came down to civil-military relations, he was exceptional. Churchill dived into the details of military tactics, strategy, and technology, incurring the wrath of his generals as a result. He challenged his officers and questioned them rigorously. He appreciated even the generals who vocally disagreed with him, as long as they weren't fools, and argued back. In Churchill's view, war statesmanship focused on a range of considerations and calculations that those on the lower levels of government could not fully understand. Churchill saw war as art. Being an extraordinary amateur artist, he understood that both art and war needed to coordinate details under the discipline of a grand theme. He played a complicated game, managing not just his generals but an unwieldy alliance of cultures and personalities as different as those of de Gaulle, Roosevelt, and Stalin. David Ben-Gurion had very little military experience when he became commander-in-chief, which might have seemed unsuitable for the job, according to Churchill. Churchill constantly monitored the actions of his generals and questioned their decisions. In a remarkable instance, he demanded that the Army Council overturn its ruling that forbade regimental patches on uniforms. Churchill recognized the advantage of these patches to morale and berated the Army Council for a decision that, although seemingly minor, could have significant implications for morale and political cohesion. For Churchill, war was above all a political undertaking. David Ben-Gurion's leadership in building Israel's army. David Ben-Gurion, the first Prime Minister of Israel, played a crucial role in building Israel's army. He formed the Haganah, the Jewish underground army, and conducted an extensive interview project known as the Seminar to study leadership, training, equipment, command structure, and intelligence. Ben-Gurion overruled existing military leaders, replaced some of them, and restructured the organization to build the kind of force that a state required. He faced opposition from Lecce and Ergun, and also endured tough political challenges. After Israel's declaration of independence in 1948, Arab armies invaded the country, and Ben-Gurion made both strategic and tactical decisions. He insisted on defending every Jewish settlement to deny the Arabs the morale boost of a Jewish retreat. Throughout it all, Ben-Gurion's leadership and attention to detail enabled him to build an army that secured Israel's place in the world. The normal theory. Military failure stems from civilian non-intervention exemplified in Vietnam and the First Gulf War. The great military leaders failed in both what they did and didn't do. In Vietnam, the obsession with body counts led to their neglect of reforming the South Vietnamese army. This gave the military free rein, leading to a politically inept and disastrous outcome. The First Gulf War saw the same issue. Left to prosecute the war on their own, the generals secured an impressive victory but failed to solve the problem that had launched the war. Their peace negotiation did not squash Saddam Hussein's opposition, most notably the Shiites of the South. The military leaders had left the job unfinished and unresolved. Military failure occurred when civilians left war to the generals, proving that normal theory's pure form.
In conclusion, Supreme Command, Soldiers, Statesmen, and Leadership in Wartime examines distinct approaches of four esteemed leaders during times of tumultuous conflict. As you reflect on the overarching message, keep in mind the political aspects of war and the importance of political leaders taking an active role in the decision-making process. Through the examples of leaders like Lincoln, Clemenceau, Churchill, and Ben-Gurion, we can learn that war is not simply a military affair but an intricate and multifaceted political instrument. To achieve success and make informed, strategic decisions, it is crucial that politicians do not just rely on military generals but delve into the heart of conflict themselves.